temper tantrums that our little 4 or 5-year-old decided to apply in public. Now, that's not to say kids don't chuck temper tantrums. They will, but the question is, how do I, as an adult, deal with that child in that particular process? And I'm going to talk about some of that stuff as we go along. So one of the other issues before we finish today that I want to talk about is the issue of, as a parent, being afraid. If I'm afraid of my child, and, this is not just as a teenager, but it's also when they're little, I remember seeing someone in a hospital when my wife had our first child, and this guy looked petrified picking the baby up. He was particularly reluctant initially and needed a lot of encouragement to pick the child up. And, I couldn't help but wonder what had happened to him personally, but also what it was that made him fear picking the child up. And I think that that's really, sad in many respects. I was very lucky. I was very much a hands-on dad. And perhaps it wasn't luck, but, perhaps it was because I've got a generally fairly pushy sort of personality and I wasn't going to be left out. But my partner, my wife, wanted me to be completely involved. And there was never any question about that. So we worked out very early on getting into a rhythm in our parenting and understanding what the values were and how we wanted to raise our children. And we would have discussions about it. And when the going was tough, we'd have more discussions about it. But the big issue is this capacity to begin to align with our children. And so for fathers, that alignment with boys is particularly important. Ultimately, until they're about 12, we tend to be heroic in their eyes. We are the person that they look up to. So we really need to ask ourselves, what is it that we're showing them? What are they learning from us? How do they perceive my interaction with their mother? Because that's going to have an influence. So there's lots of stuff in that. So over the next couple of podcasts, I'm going to go into a number of topics, one of which is communication between fathers and sons, but also understanding what the tasks are in parenting and in the father-son relationship. And one of the things that's really, really important is that as a dad, I need to have meaningful conversations with my son. And it's not just about getting a checklist about what they have and haven't done. So, one of the things that I often say is that being a man is about who you are as a human being. It's not based necessarily just on your sex and the gender that you have. Being a father is about a role you've taken on and a role that is importantly aligned with who you are. And in that context, we need to look at 3 elements. We need to look at our awareness. We need to look at how we align and how we create attunement between myself and my child. It also means that I need to be attuned to myself. So, in a sense, being match fit. So, drinking a lot or taking drugs and all that sort of stuff isn't going to help me become a better parent. There are many times when I've worked with fathers who, especially on the weekend, suffer hangovers most of the time. Now, I dare anybody to be cool, calm and collected when they've got a hangover trying to deal with a kid. It's not going to happen. And so that's not appropriate. All right, I hope that's given you a bit of a sort of feel for where we're going to be going in the next few podcasts, and I hope you're going to join me. talk a lot more about this in my book, Making Good Men Great, Surfing a New Masculinity. Because the other thing that we need to figure out is, what is it I want my son to grow into? Unfortunately, there are still a lot of boys who manage to pick up very misogynistic messages, both sometimes from their dads, but also from their peer group, and especially in schools, despite the schools' almost monumental efforts to squash that sort of behaviour. It's still there. So in the next podcast, one of the things that I might be looking at, probably will, is what it means to live in alignment, firstly individually, but then also in relationships. And after that, I want to talk a little bit about sort of some of the micro skills that are useful to pick up on and how to put those into practice. Stuff like, what is masculinity about as a father, and what do I expect to see in my son? And part of that, as I always say, is that as men, we need to rethink masculinity because the patriarchal stuff ain't working. And it's one of the reasons why we have lots of psychological distress and disturbance in our boys and young men and older men. Okay, until next time, I hope you found this interesting, and I'm looking forward you tuning in to me for the next podcast. Until then, take care.
Thank you for listening to Inspire Change with Gunter. Gunter Swoboda does individual and group coaching for men looking to grow. For more information on this and the global Making Good Men Great movement, check out goodmengreat.com to get into contact. If you have a topic for the show or would like to be a guest on the air, please email producers at miranda@noirtainment.com. That's Miranda, Miranda, at noirtainment, noirtainment.com. Thank you, and always keep inspiring change.